What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dunk on AP podcast. Today we are finishing out Unit 7, if you can believe it. We are rolling through this thing, and we are going to be covering mass atrocities after the year 1900. So, without further ado, let's go dunk on AP World. So, what we're talking about here are going to be some things that you're definitely familiar with. Some of them you'll have heard of, some of them you may not be as familiar with. Let's start with the Armenian Genocide. So this happened from 1915 to 1923 in the Ottoman Empire. The who of this is ethnic Armenians, and the results are that 1.5 million died and hundreds of thousands were exiled. So the basic story of what happened here: the Young Turks seized power in the Ottoman Empire in 1908. Remember that there had been some limited reforms in the Tanzimat reforms leading up to that point, but nothing that was really extensive. Turkish nationalism contributed to the view of Armenians as a threat. The Ottomans' entry into World War I created suspicions that Armenians were supporting the Russian Empire. So the effects of the Armenian genocide. It was a systematic campaign against ethnic Armenians that involved forced marches, mass shootings, and concentration camps. There were the deaths of about 1.5 million Armenians, and there was also deportation via death marches into the Syrian desert. Surviving Armenians created diasporas in other parts of the world. So, moving on now to the Holodomor famine in Ukraine. So, this was in from 1932 to 1933. This was where was this? It was the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. The who of this affects Ukrainian farmers and peasants, and the results were that approximately 3.5 to 7 million or more Ukrainians die as a result of this famine. So Ukraine was the breadbasket of Europe. Stalin collectivized farms and collected grain to export to finance industrial efforts. There was resistance from farmers, and it was met with brutal repression by the Soviets. Grain and seeds were taken, and travel bans were enacted to prevent starving people from looking for food, if you can believe that. And this led to the deaths of 3 million to 7 million Ukrainians, and they died of starvation. This effectively erased entire villages. There was a lot of political repression aimed at destroying Ukrainian nationalism. So that is Holodomor. And then there is the Holocaust. And this is obviously the big famous one that goes 1941 to 1945 is when we really look at it, but really the concentration camps in Germany start as early as 1933. This is in Nazi occupied Europe. It affects European Jews among others. 6 million Jews were murdered specifically. So the Nuremberg laws of 1935, they legally defined Jews as non-citizens. Remember, Germany was in economic turmoil after World War One. Hitler capitalized on the instability and poor conditions in Germany. He blamed Jews for Germany's problems. So propaganda campaigns dehumanized Jews. Their properties were destroyed during the Kristallnacht, which is the Night of Broken Glass in 1938. The outbreak of World War II provided the cover and infrastructure for the Nazis to escalate their racial policies into systematic genocide. This leads to 6 million killed and hundreds of thousands of displaced survivors. There was destruction of communities through this. There also, you get the establishment of Israel in 1948 and the subsequent Arab-Israeli conflict. The Nuremberg trials hold key individuals accountable for crimes against humanity. Then there is the Cambodian genocide. This was from 1975 to 1979 in Cambodia, obviously. So the who on this, it's intellectuals, professionals, Buddhists, ethnic minorities, former government officials, anyone who is suspected of being disloyal to the Khmer Rouge ideology. And between 1.7 and 2 million people, almost a quarter of the population, die as a result of this genocide. So the Khmer Rouge comes to power in Cambodia after a period of instability and civil war. The aim was to transform Cambodia into an agrarian, classless society free from foreign influence. The genocide was driven by extreme ideology and targeted anyone perceived as a threat. So the effects of this were that an estimated 22 to 24% of the entire Cambodian population died. Families were separated. Genocide was followed by an invasion from Vietnam. The Khmer Rouge was toppled in January 1979. and that marked the end of the period of genocide. Now, moving on to the Rwandan genocide, this lasted for 100 days in 1994 in Rwanda, again, as you might have guessed. Um, what you're going to see here is that the Tutsi minority are attacked. So 800,000 to 1 million people are killed during this genocide. So the Hutus, if we're kind of talking about the roots of the problem here, the Hutus were a majority group, and the Tutsis were a minority. German and Belgian colonists altered the social dynamics of Rwanda and relied on the Tutsi minority to administer their policies. They introduced identity cards classifying individuals as Hutu, Tutsi, or Twa, and this led to a lot of resentments among the Hutu minority. So Belgium facilitated transitions of power to the Hutu majority in the 1950s. And the Hutu Revolution of 1959 led to significant violence against Tutsis. Rwanda was deeply divided along ethnic lines at independence in 1962. The Tutsi refugee communities invaded Rwanda, and that began the Rwandan Civil War. So the president of Rwanda is assassinated in 1994, and that is the immediate catalyst for the genocide. 800,000 to 1 million people were killed in a relatively short span of 100 days. This created a significant refugee crisis. So the genocide ended in July 1994 after the Tutsi led RPF came to power. So the common factors in 20th century genocides is that they have ideological foundations. Usually they are extremist ideologies. So there's also use of state machinery and propaganda. Extremist groups in each case either seized state power or operated as the state itself. There were also pre existing tensions. In all instances, historical grievances, ethnic or class tensions, and political strife were exploited by extremist groups. And then there's international context and reaction. So these genocides occurred during periods of broader conflict or upheaval. So that's all I've got for you on this topic. You guys have a good one.